What's the number one thing you'd want to get across to your viewers?
Quite a few of those minos are over 20 years old.
Seriously?
Yeah.
20 years old?
Yeah.
I've never known a shrimp get that old. That's amazing.
No, people don't believe it, but
This must be the oldest jewel aquarium I've ever seen. 1995. 1995. What's that? 28 years ago.
yeah, give or take, yeah.
And this was actually hand built, right?
Yes, yeah, as long before Jewel had the robots installed.
Wow.
It was actually hand built in the Jewel factory.
German, all Germany, isn't it? It's always been Germany.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My first aquarium, proper aquarium, was a Jewel Rio 125.
Mm.
This is a 180.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I bought my Rio 125 in 2002, so 21 years ago.
So it was probably still a T8
It
tank.
was two T8 lights, yeah,
Yeah.
two 18-watt T8 lights, and I was really geeky about researching the best bulbs for plant growth.
Mm.
So I used loads of combinations over the years, and then I come up with a way to actually get 4 bulbs in there. So I just balanced them on the brace, on the central brace, and then just use the.
You can put 2 light bars on and just cut flaps down.
Yeah.
I've seen that done a few times, but even when this tank was run just with 2 T8s, it was never a problem.
Yeah.
In fact, for a long while, I preferred it with the lower.
What's it got now on it? Does it get T8s now?
No, it's the standard dual LEDs that come with the tank today.
Oh, okay.
So it's, I think there's 17 watts, 2 of them on there, but they're not the ones you can adjust and play around with. There,
No.
just the bog standard ones.
Yeah.
It's basically a tank that you can still buy.
Yeah. I mean, the 180 is a class. The Rio range are a classic, aren't they?
I think the 125 and the 180 are the best sizes. Actually.
Yeah.
Nice manageable sizes, fit in the house. Just do the job.
I grew my first ever glosso carpet in that Rio 125, and it had a big Java fern, a glosso carpet, and Anubias and Sagittaria, and it was my first ever real nature aquarium, and it got me. Yeah, it was really got the thing started for me. That's
I think the dual tanks have got a lot of people into the hobby.
Yeah, they make it accessible, don't they?
Yeah.
Because you've got the built-in lighting, the built-in heater,
It's just so
built-in
simple,
filter.
isn't it?
Yeah. What's this in the background that you've got?
That is their original SDR background.
The what, sorry? SDR?
Yeah, that was just the label.
Their brand, yeah.
It's just like it's not quite polystyrene.
It's
but
like foam, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
And the white spots?
That's the nerite eggs. There's a load of Polgera nerites in there which are ancient, but they tick along.
Wow. And you've got loads of mono shrimp in there. How old are they then?
Quite a few of those minos are over 20 years old.
Seriously?
Yeah.
20 years old?
Yeah.
I've never known a shrimp get that old. That's amazing.
No, people don't believe it, but
No, I believe it.
I have added more since, but I've only ever added another 6, and there's still 12 in there, so at least 6 of them are. When I say they're over 20, they could be nearer 28, but I really don't know.
Wow.
It's certainly, but they're almost immortal, mono shrimps. They're incredible things. They still shed their shells every now and again,
Yeah.
but they don't really grow. But a few other bits and bobs in there. The tiger lotus is about 20, give or take.
I'm never going to use the term personally long-term scape again, because I've never created a long-term scape. This is a long-term
It's a different
scape.
type of scale, isn't it?
28-year-old scape. This scape's been running longer than many viewers have been alive.
Yeah, well, I can show you pictures of this crinum. I mean, some years it's massively thick and huge and out of scale, and it eventually flowers.
Yeah.
It comes straight out the top of the tank. It's a massive, great thing, but it's kind of just in proportion at the moment.
Yeah, that's great.
So yeah, it just does its thing.
So what's the secret to success with this type of? So viewers out there will look at this and they'll think this is amazing. It looks beautiful. The water's crystal clear. It's virtually zero maintenance. It seems too good to be true. There must be some sort of friction to creating something like this. Otherwise, it's too easy.
It's mostly patience.
Okay.
I think you touched on it, what you just said a moment ago, in terms of the longevity of escape.
Yeah.
Because I don't believe a tank is mature until it's probably years old. And I know if I set up a new tank that, you know, whilst you can cycle a tank in a month,
Yeah.
after 6 months it improves. But I also know that a tank that's a year old is better than one that's 6 months old. And one that's 5 years old is better than one that's a year old. And one that's 10 years old is probably better than one that's 5 years old.
How do you define better though, James?
Basically, it gets more and more stable and more balanced. I mean, it's like if you look at the amount of algae you get in this tank, it's virtually none. You know, you really don't get very much at all.
The water's really clear as well.
Yeah, and if you think that water hasn't had, I was trying to work it out, and I think the last proper water change this tank had was in 2013 because it was moved into this room. You know, so that water is that old, and if you take a glass of that water out, it's not yellow, it's not brown, it's clear.
That's amazing.
You know, it's not what you would expect. But I think the long-term secret, as I see it anyway, is to never disturb the substrate, because the substrate builds up lots of different layers of different microorganisms, because you get kind of the aerobic zone, the anaerobic zone, and probably the noxic zone.
What is the substrate? Just gravel?
No, well, originally it had a thin layer of laterite on the bottom,
Okay.
that was what you had in those days.
Oh yeah.
And then it had coarse gravel and then fine gravel.
Okay.
That's all it is. There's
Wow.
nothing.
And then you're just letting all the waste accumulation do its thing.
It's never been siphoned, and I've never really ever dug a plant up out of this tank. So all the different layers have remained intact, and all that biology that goes on in the substrate, which is kind of rocket science, but you don't really need to know that. If you leave it long enough, it'll develop its natural state, and it'll function as a natural ecosystem. It's back to the time thing. It really takes a long while for that to all kick in, and the longer it goes, the better it gets. And it just gets more and more stable.
More and more self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Like everything is in equilibrium, so the amount of waste that's being produced is exactly the same as it's being consumed.
Yeah, and then the other thing that you always have to do then is to have an export method.
Yeah.
Which, because you're not doing water changes, you need a way of exporting nutrients. Because you're adding food, at some point you've got to be taking something out.
Yeah.
Because although some of it will get kind of laid down into the substrate, over time I found that never works long term.
Right.
You always need an export method.
And what's your export method?
Basically, the water lettuce, the floating plants, take the heavy lifting.
Right.
Because they absorb probably more than anything.
Mm-hmm.
But anything fast growing, the ambula is fantastic for it as well, because it grows really fast. But basically you need to be able to take plant material out of the tank regularly in order to regulate that balance. And if you get that balance right, it basically will last indefinitely. It's not something that you have to particularly work at, it's just...
Yeah. It's a very zen way of keeping an aquarium, having no resistance, just letting things kind of flow, unfold naturally.
Yes.
Whereas what a lot of the methods that I've advocated in the past, especially the high tech or high energy, is more about enforcing some level of perceived improvement or speeding up.
Yes.
Or
yes.
it's like a equivalent. I see it as like a equivalent of in a human a performance enhancing drug. Where you're trying to just kind of overcome or not defeat, but lean in towards what you think is an improvement on nature.
Yes.
And I guess for me, the main desire was to have something beautiful to look at.
Yes.
But when you go beyond that, of it just being something that's there to please your kind of aesthetic desire, it's you can do that, but you can do it in a much more slow and steady way.
This tank basically does everything at the pace it wants to.
Yeah.
Nothing is forced to do anything.
Yeah.
It just ticks along.
It's just the lack of noise as well. It's just something I've just noticed because.
Yeah, it is basically one of the things I've always liked about these tanks is they basically outside and running.
Are you running the filter?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, you can't see much
Oh,
because
yeah.
the ambulance is so
Yeah,
low
I can
at
see
the
it running. Yeah, I can see
Um,
the
but-
surface is. There's no scum or anything.
No,
so-
you absolutely don't get surface films because there's no excess of anything.
Yeah.
Everything is basically stripped from the water column by the water lettuce and the plants.
The plant health is amazing. There's no algae. I mean, I think the main difference I observe in the difference in the plants themselves is their smaller size. How are these all 28 years old? These crips?
They are.
Do they get bigger? Do you keep them pruned?
Yes, they will get. I've had them up here before.
Oh, okay. I just thought they were stunted
They've
growth.
never been dug up and thinned,
Oh.
but they do get pruned occasionally when they get out of hand.
So just for instance, this crip here, it was planted 28 years ago.
Yes. I think looking at some old pictures, I think it was just planted along the front originally, and obviously it's spread around the whole tank. And there are a couple of other species mixed in with it, but the bulk of it is just one species. I think it's just an old Wentioi clone. I don't remember which because it's just so long ago. But it's a nice easy plant, so it's good to go.
It looks like a Wentioi green. Well, this looks like.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's Wentioi green because Wentioi green's broader.
Okay.
But it's of that
Oh,
kind
it
of.
is. Yeah, you're right.
It's
Yeah.
definitely of that kind of
Yeah,
type.
it's a
But
Wentioi morph. Isn't it?
yeah, it's just a different one.
What's the oldest fish you've got in here?
Most of them are about 5 years old. Probably the glass bloodfins.
Yeah.
You can see there's a bent one, which
Oh yeah.
always was bent, but it's getting more bent now that
Yeah.
it's getting old. But yeah, the fish is not the mix of fish I would choose. It's basically because I broke down some tanks and everything got conglomerated. I generally like to keep 2 or 3 species in the tank.
Okay.
It kind of just looks more elegant. It's a bit of a muddle as it is really.
Yeah. I quite like it. It's not too eclectic. At least they're all tetras, aren't they? Pretty much.
Yeah, it's all carotins. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
nothing else in there. Just carotins and lots of shrimps of lots of little neocarodinia as well.
So do you feed the fish? You must do, I guess.
Yeah. I feed the fish twice a day, every day.
Okay, we won't do it now.
Just a tiny amount.
You've even got like the nearite snail eggs on the snail egg. On the
I
snail
do
shells.
that all the time. I made a little video the other day. I put these
It looks
new
like
species of snail in, and literally overnight the nerites laid eggs over its shell. I don't know why they do it, but they make a beeline for other snails. They're kind of a bit nocturnal, so you can't see many of them, but obviously there's a big one there. But they're absolutely covered in their own eggs.
Do you have Malaysian trumpet snails?
Yes.
Do you find them helpful?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Malaysian trumpets, ram's horns, and bladder snails, the kind of main ones I put in with the nerites. They all do a different job, so they're all part of the mix. And if you look in the tank, there's always, whether it's a shrimp or a snail, there's always something crawling
Yeah.
and all working. Well, Marlo's a king, obviously, but they all play their part. All part of the recycling process.
And you're just going to keep it running forever?
Yeah, I mean, there's no sign of the tank itself giving up, so I don't really see any reason to get rid of it. It's a bit scratched now because of its age, but
Yeah.
apart from that, there's nothing wrong with it. So
Would you ever consider putting hardscape in there?
no, you won't like this. I basically don't put hardscape into tanks because I'm a believer that the greater the substrate surface area that's available for all the microorganisms,
Yeah.
the better the tank is and the better the balance is. So when I do put scape in,
Yeah.
it'll be a piece of wood that is barely touching the substrate.
Yeah.
Plus I'm a plant person, I just like plants, so
Yeah.
I'm not so interested in the hardscape in that way. But I'm sure there's middle ground in terms of what you could do in that respect.
It's a really interesting kind of thought experiment, isn't it? Because it basically sums up the difference between someone who's more inclined to use their aquarium just as something beautiful, or someone who's using it more to get the best sort of functionality
Yes,
out of it,
Yeah, I very much go for the functionality first,
Yeah.
and then the aesthetic second.
Yeah.
But you know, I like the tank to look respectable, but
Yeah, I mean the
I
plants
also
obviously
decide-
to give you a lot of functionality.
yeah, and
Yeah.
the plants are the ultimate, aren't they? Really.
Interesting. Sums up balance, doesn't it? You know, really, if there's such a thing.
Yeah, I think that's my favourite term for these kind of tanks is, you know, the balanced aquarium, because I think that sums it up. You know, all the other terminologies are a bit of a nonsense, really.
Yeah.
It's just keeping everything in that natural balance, sort of equilibrium.
Yeah, and the less input you have as a human in like intervening with the process, so you know the minimal water changes, you know, minimal sort of mechanical filtration as well.
I think the lack of water changes, in a strange way, creates incredible balance because you're never upsetting anything, and I think in terms of the microbiology that goes on in tanks, I think that's extremely important. It's just that basic stability over the long term, because I think, for example, if you start disturbing things, especially where the substrate is concerned, you're basically creating mini extinctions, and you can probably create a sort of an extinction almost instantaneously, which could potentially take years to build up in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think it is back to that timescale thing, and I think nature doesn't work on our timescales. Definitely not.
No.
It takes a very long while.
Humans have become very addicted to wanting to
Speed things up.
Yeah, I think that's one
Or
of our
the-
biggest problems.
the whole concept of improvement or growth, you know, but growth isn't about, you know, consuming more, is it? It's about actually creating more.
Yeah.
So you know, in here, you're getting growth from minimal consumption, whereas what we're doing with high tech is we're playing that kind of consumption game. You know, that hedonistic treadmill of
Yes.
always chasing the next high. You know, like what plant can I get to grow next? You know, how red can I get it? How much can I control my lighting? You know, and all these kind of attaching, kind of craving behaviours we have as humans. You know, trying more is more kind of philosophy, which isn't natural. It's not. Well, what is natural? This is the antithesis of that. Do you know what I mean? Because this is just letting nature take its course with minimal intervention. Everything is slow and steady. It's just got a really peaceful vibe because there's no noise. There's minimal movement of the water. The fish is still active and healthy. The plants are immaculate, and it's a real. It's pretty mind blowing, to be honest, mate. Yeah, I was prepared for this. I was prepared to have my.
I didn't know what you were going to expect, to be perfectly honest, because obviously aesthetically it's incredibly different to what you're used to. It's just that it is run on a completely different sort of mindset in a way.
Yeah, but different doesn't mean worse or better. You know, better. It just means different. And those that cast sort of any judgment on anything that anyone does is more about themselves than the thing. But yeah, it's beautiful on a different level. You know, this has got a deeper beauty, I think, rather than superficial Photoshop beauty.
Yes. There's so much today is fake, but I think it's nice to have something that is just grounded and doing things that isn't forced in any way.
Yeah.
And you know, I get plants that fail, and you know, I don't worry about it. You know, if something likes the conditions that I've created, then fine, it stays. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
Yeah.
That really doesn't worry me. I mean, there's some bits of water Sprite in here that I've put in recently to see if that will grow as well as the water lettuce. And it's struggling, quite honestly, and it'll probably get beaten out by the water lettuce, but that's fine.
That's nature.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. So you know, I put it in other tanks and it'll grow. So every tank is different in that respect.
Yeah. So in a tank like this, you're going to experience alliopathy, aren't you? I guess.
I think almost certainly that goes on. I know there's lots of debate.
Because there's no water changes to dilute it, any of the chemicals that they're secreting to each other.
And I mean, whether that has a part to play in terms of getting no algae, or whether it's just down to having enough basically healthy plant mass that is doing it. But you could argue that's the same thing anyway, in terms of what's going on. The algae almost doesn't stand a chance. I mean, the one thing you absolutely don't get in these tanks is black-beard algae, for example. It just will not grow. You know, I could come home from a fish shop with a plant with black-beard algae on and put it in this tank and just watch it die.
Amazing.
It just will not survive.
Starved of nutrients because the plants are consuming it.
I don't know whether it's the
substrate, is it there, or the you say the substrate strips nitrates and phosphates.
It's funny, having done so many experiments with tanks, one of the things that I've tried to find is a consistent result with deep substrates removing nitrate, and I honestly don't think they do very much. I think the stability of a deep substrate recycles the nutrients that makes the plants grow that remove the nitrates. I think that's the way it happens in actual fact. I don't really think there's much denitrification that goes on in substrates. Certainly not in an aquarium anyway. Whenever I've had a tank where I'm constantly removing plants, I had zero nitrate. I mean, if you test the water on this tank, you'll find that the nitrate and the phosphate is always undetectable. You never ever get a reading. And probably if you looked at the water lettuce from above, from what you're used to, you would say that my water lettuce is hungry. But to me, that's perfect because that means it's not wasting anything. It's stripped everything, and it's basically running a bit lean. But it's still, you know, I'm taking out. I took out half a bucket yesterday. It's just unstoppable, and that's basically just on fish food.
You ever tempted to like chuck a load of fertiliser in there for a laugh?
I have done that.
Have you?
Yeah, you name it, I've tried it.
What happened?
I think it was shortly after I moved the tank here in 2010. It hadn't been fertilised for quite a while, and I thought, what happens if you put half a bottle of Tropico fertiliser in a tank like this? And I literally put, probably wasn't quite half a bottle, but a lot, a massive dose. I can't remember if it was the one with the nitrate and the phosphate in or the ordinary one. But I poured a massive, it was enough to make the water go brown, let's put it that way. I put it in the tank, and the floating plant, and I think I had Hormort in the tank at the time, went absolutely mental. But it had no effect on anything else in the tank at all.
That's interesting.
That's all that happened. I didn't get any algae, nothing happened at all. It was just one of those weird experiments. And I thought, okay.
That's so interesting.
So I can make floaters grow faster if I want to, but I've not really followed down that route. I've not added anything for a very long while. But I have tried lots of strange things with this tank along the way. But I think because it's so old and stable, even when I've done things that turned out to be a bit dumb, it bounces back so incredibly quickly. It just has that long-term balance to do that.
So, what would happen if I left my jewellery out? Not my jewel. What am I on about? My read of that bit. My Highline 400. If I because that's got soil in the back, you know, tropical aquarium soil, not gravel. Can you leave that to do the same thing? Would that have the same effect in the long term?
I think it would basically end up as a soil-based tank, but I think you would probably end up having to cap it because eventually it would disintegrate.
And get into like a powder, like a mud.
You'd get too much in the water column, I think. But one of the reasons I like actually having a carpet of crypts is that when you do get a little bit of mould building up on the bottom of the tank, it stops it getting kicked up by the fish because there's not completely open areas. Not that it particularly matters because if the shrimps and things do kick the mould up, then the filter takes it anyway. So
I'm really tempted to like turn the CO2 off on my my 400 and I just run one filter, like with minimal, just the pre-filter on it.
Yeah.
And then probably take I don't know, leave a fish in there maybe. and then just see what happens for it, just as an experiment. Do you think it would go through a massive transition? Do you think it'd like drop a load of crypts or drop a load of leaves?
No. I think what you would find is slowly the survival of the fittest would kick in.
Yeah.
And you will find obviously certain things will win and certain things will lose, but they might not be the things you expect.
Yeah.
It's quite different.
Should I do that? Do you think I should? I'm really tempted.
It depends how much of an experiment you want, how long you want to do it. That's the other thing.
Well, I think it'd be a great exercise in patience. I mean, I've kept that scape going in various forms for a few years, but I think, I mean, it makes, because it's such a big volume of water, it seemed to be, it makes sense because it's so stable already.
Yeah, I mean, and at the end of the day, doing, I think it's 50% changes you do, isn't it? I mean, that's quite a lot of work.
It's a lot of water as well.
Keep doing
resources,
that. Yeah, I mean, it is something that, I mean, the scape would change because of it. But I think with your aquascaping skills, I don't think the tank would necessarily be less aesthetically pleasing.
Well, I mean, if I could maintain plant health like this, I'd be more than happy.
Honestly, it's not pristine, but I don't particularly manicure it.
But I just like the idea of not running CO2 and being more letting nature, because I have really hard tap water.
Yeah.
And I think it would actually remove a lot of the hardness, wouldn't it? I guess because it uses it as
It depends on how you maintain the tank in the long term. I have deliberately let it drop in this tank because it's got tetras in it.
Yeah. Well, mine's got tetras. So.
My tap water has a TDS of about 400, 450, but this tank runs about 250, and I keep it at about that level.
Yeah.
I don't let it rise or fall particularly.
Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to siphon all that sand out the front.
If they just
put pea gravel in the front, and then turn the CO2 off, half the light intensity, and then just leave it.
I don't think you even need to lower the light intensity.
Just leave the light as it is. Is it? Yeah.
I don't think you.
And do you think tweak the CO2 down a little bit incrementally?
Yeah, it probably would be a wise thing to just knock it down every week or something.
Yeah, by that one. There's something like 5 or 6 bubbles a second at the moment.
Yeah, I would probably do a week on 5, a week on 4,
Yeah.
and just knock it down, just so you don't get too sudden a reaction to things. But there's no reason why you can't turn a high-tech tank into a low-tech tank. It's something because the tank is already mature.
Yeah.
You're halfway there. It's probably down to the expectations really of to what you're expecting to happen.
Yeah.
But it often isn't what you think. It's even in terms of the stocking level. I know there's small fish in this tank, but I mean there's a reasonable number of fish. And these tanks actually function better if you've got a good fish stock.
Right.
They can struggle if you haven't got many fish because you're not adding enough
nutrients.
Nutrient to keep it ticking along.
So effectively, the fish food is feeding the plants.
Yes, yeah, I can actually regulate plant growth by how much I feed the fish.
And how quick do you see that response?
Almost instant.
Wow.
It happens incredibly quickly. If you increase the fish food, the plants will grow faster. It's as long as you don't tip past that balance of adding too much food that the tank can cope with.
You don't have any hydra or anything in here?
Yes, there are hydra in here. Yeah, because I've collected Daphne around my ponds. I saw some the other day actually. There's hydra, there's tubifex and various annelid worms in the gravel or substrate. Yeah. There's lots and lots of stuff that's been added. You can see these little tracks where the worms live, but they actually in the mould.
Oh yeah.
You can see them where they actually live. And I did find some tubifex in the back of the tank the other day and tried to film it. Quite how the tubifex has survived for 10 years with the fish in there, I don't know, but it does.
Did that maybe develop a super strain?
Tetras are not that inquisitive, they're not like some fish, but I think in some ways the shrimps bother it more. They seem to dig around.
So what is the filter? It's an internal filter?
It's the standard dual filter. It's just basically got foams in it, that's it. There's no, they don't use carbon or anything like that, it's just foams. Occasionally put a bit of wool in just to polish it, but that's about it really.
It's only when you see for your own eyes that you believe. It's corny, but
Yeah, yeah.
But to have something that's so sort of mature and stable, you could just feel, you can almost feel it, like the vibe it's giving off. You know, the chilled out nature of the fish. It's just
it's
just
funny,
a very peaceful aquascape.
I haven't actually seen a proper high-tech tank for a few years now.
Yeah.
So I kind of lose track a little bit of just how big a difference it is in terms of that style of doing things.
Yeah.
You know, you get used to what you do yourself, and you know, you see it every day. But it, you know, it still evolves, but
yeah, it does.
It's one of those things that evolves in the way that it wants to.
It's making me more aware of how my kind of the way I position the hobby in my life. You know, it serves so many purposes for me. You know, like that sounds really egotistical. It serves purposes for me, but I used to just be obsessed about the sort of aesthetic of it.
Yes.
And got so obsessed about that I kind of, you know, made myself quite well known, you know, with it. But now as I mature as a person, I think, as I become more awake to what's going on, I just feel this style, this kind of way of doing things, just much more in keeping with what I want to be as a person. You know, so having less need for showing things off, or having the best of this, or seeking perfection, I guess, or you know, or escaping.
I think it's a different kind of perfection in a way.
Yeah.
You know, it's because it's doing what it wants to do. It's a sort of perfection at nature's level.
Yeah.
You know, you can actually watch how nature cleans things and actually recycles things.
Yeah.
And I think that all has a part to play, and it's part of the interest. You know, it's for me, I just like watching even just the decay of things, and then just seeing this sort of how things get cleaned up. You know, when you get a leaf that starts to decay, and then you know you see a cryptocoryne leaf with a few holes in it, and then you see the snails move in and clean that up. So you never really get decay proper. It all disappears. And I think that's just soothing in its own way.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not forced.
Yeah.
You know, it's just doing it as it's intended.
Yeah.
And the result is more balance, and I get a huge amount of enjoyment of just observing, really. I think that's one of the things for me, is that because I'm not hands-on doing lots and lots of maintenance on the tank, I spend far too much time with a cup of tea. Just
enjoying
observing and looking and seeing what's going on.
And in its own way, that's still part of maintaining it, because you're just observing, and you know what's going on. You're connecting with it, and it's a conversation between you and this thing that you've created. But you've kind of done the initial creation, and you've let nature almost do its own creation for its own evolution.
Yes.
You know, so this is more in keeping with, like, imagine if there was no humans on the planet, right? Like planet Earth. Imagine no humans. This is like that, because this has evolved naturally without human intervention.
Yes,
so
as far as is sensibly possible.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously I do have to intervene, because things like the ambulia, you know, would take the tank over.
You need to.
You know, it's not consciously put where it is. You know, you can see it's running around the tank at the moment, and you know, within reason, I let it do that. And you know, the ones at the back are going to need to be trimmed this week, but you know, I won't dig them up or anything. I'll simply remove the tall stems, and you know, you can see it's going that way now. So next time you come, the ambulia will probably be at that end, but that's fine. You know, that's how it is. So that's how
this reminds me of one really kind of important Zen. It's like a Zen lesson, I think. That a muddy pool doesn't clear by stirring; it only clears by leaving it be.
Yes, yeah. Definitely.
And so that, you know, if we equate that to aquarium keeping, you have a muddy pool as a high tech or high energy guy. You'd rely on like powerful filtration, changing the water.
Yes.
adding fertilisers, adding CO2 to clean the water, you know, whereas what you're doing is just leaving the water.